In today's video, we will be going over the moon path. We'll be starting at sequence 9, going all the way down to sequence 0, covering all the abilities along the way. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's kick things off straight away with sequence 9 Apothecary, and it's a very bad sequence 9 in my opinion. Actually, they really don't gain too much, just knowledge on how to take care of plants, knowledge on how to create medical concoctions, for example, one that will make your libido stronger, one that will make your strength, speed, and agility stronger for a short amount of time, one that can stop bleeding to some extent, so it's okay, but nothing too crazy, on top of some minor physical enhancements such as resistance against poisons and toxins, and some minor increase in spirituality and being able to use spirit vision. So all in all, nothing too crazy, and let's move on to sequence 8. Now let's move on to sequence 8 Beast Tamer, and it is one of the most simple sequence 8s in the entire series. As the name suggests, they're basically able to tame wild beasts and turn them into animals that they can control. They're even able to read their minds, take care of them exceptionally well, and even feed them Beyonder potions in order to make the animal a Beyonder, creature. So all in all, very decent, on top of some, pretty big physical enhancements because they have to be able to clash against these animals in the wild. But all in all, not too crazy. Let's move on to sequence 7. Now let's move on to one of the coolest and strongest sequence 7s in the entire series, called Vampire. They gain so many new abilities, so let's get straight into it. First of all, they have some level of control over darkness and the domain of darkness, which means that they can summon illusory things out of darkness and control them. For example, they're able to summon wings, and they can now fly using those illusory darkness wings. They're also able to create chains that can tie the opponent down. They're also able to do other things, such as turn themselves into a swarm of bats and simply overwhelm the opponent, or escape from situations as well, which is a very versatile ability in my opinion, not talked about enough. On top of this, if they have extra Beyonder characteristics, they're able to simply take out that Beyonder characteristic, bestow it onto a normal human, and that human will automatically become a sequence 7 vampire instantly without having to go through sequence 9 and sequence 8. So some very busted abilities in my opinion, on top of being able to turn the beasts that you tame into blood servants. So they're no longer just beasts that sort of still have a mind on their own, they're just submitting to you. No, once you turn a beast into a blood servant, they become fully obedient to you as if it's a puppet. They become much stronger, much more resilient. They're able to, not get affected by almost any disease. So it is a real pain in the ass to face off against a vampire, simply because the amount of abilities they have. Not to mention that their claws are so sharp now, they can simply cut through steel and cut through any opponent whose defenses are made out of scale, armor, etc. It doesn't matter, they'll cut straight through with their new and enhanced nails. And they also gain crazy physical enhancements that basically makes them a separate species away from humanity. They're not only able to live around 300 years, but their appearance improves, making them not only look better, but they also gain extremely strong agility, speed, and regeneration capabilities. They're even so fast they're able to leap after images when they're running normally. However, they do gain a weak point, and that is the fact that any purification ability will work extremely strong against them. So all in all, I still think without this, even with this weak point, it is the strongest sequence 7. And yeah, let's move straight on to sequence 6. Now let's move on to sequence 6 Potions Professors, or among the Sanguine, this would be a Baron. It's a very decent sequence 6 in my opinion. Again, sequence 6s usually aren't too crazy, but let me go over what they get. Basically, first let's go over the physical enhancements. They get even more increased lifespan, which by the way is pretty ridiculous for sequence 7 and 6 to be able to live for hundreds and hundreds of years. Their sense of smell also gets massively buffed. So for example, when an entity is around them that is hidden, for example invisibility, but they can't hide their scent, the sequence 6 Potions Professor will be able to smell them. So for example, if someone's using psychological invisibility, but they still smell, yeah, Potions Professor can detect them. So it's a very, useful ability to have. As for the actual abilities and not physical enhancements, they're able to basically gain so much knowledge on potions. They're able to create potions themselves that have all types of mystical effects. For example, one is extremely powerful against vampire type enemies. The other one will allow them to spit out fire breath. The other one will allow them to turn invisible. Another one will allow them to completely remove their sense of smell. Another one will prevent the effects of dream pulling. And another one will allow them to use shadows and teleport around shadows. So all in all, some very, very strong stuff if you know how to use it correctly, if you take into account the risks involved with creating potions in the first place, right? You're mixing Beyonder characteristics and other mystical items. In the world of Lore of the Mysteries, randomized things can be extremely dangerous sometimes, but if you are a committed Potions Professor, you can definitely make this sequence 6 a very, very decent one. Anyways, let's move on to sequence 5. Now let's move on to sequence 5 Scarlet Scholar, also known among the Sanguines as a Viscount. Once again, this sequence requires the Beyonder to do their research, really get familiar with their abilities, otherwise they won't be able to use it properly. To explain it as simply as possible, they can create a domain expansion like the one from JJK. They can create 2 domain expansions. One of them where moonlight surrounds the area. They're able to create basically a full moon that completely illuminates the entire area with moonlight, and they're also able to create one where there's no moonlight whatsoever. Now, what's the difference and when do they need to use one versus the other? If the opponent is not good at spirits-based combat, using spirituality, etc., then they will create a moonlight-ridden zone, one where there's moonlight everywhere, because within that zone, everyone's spirituality will be enhanced, all of their spirit-based combat will be enhanced. And if they're facing an opponent who excels at this type of combat, of course they don't want to bring them and enhance all of that for them. So they will create an area devoid of any moonlight and basically reduce their spirituality, reduce their spirit-based combat, and bring them into a physical battle of their own. Now, the Sequence 5 Scarlet Scholar themselves usually does prefer to fight under the domain of Moonlight because they gain a bunch of abilities when they are under it. Other than all of their physical capabilities getting boosted while they are under the Moonlight, they're also able to turn into Moonlight themselves, and they can move around and teleport around this area with extreme speed. On top of this, even if their whole body was to be destroyed, they can simply teleport away and basically reconstruct themselves under the Moonlight. The only way to truly kill them when they're in this state is if they were to get hit directly into the heart, not to any other part of their body, just a simple attack to the heart, which is incredibly difficult as of course the Scarlet Scholar will protect their hearts through various means and not give up the weakness if the opponent doesn't know it. On top of this, they're able to simply teleport, and as long as there's moonlight anywhere, they're able to teleport to that area. Their strengthened abilities are also very simple, just buffs to every previous sequence, and now they also counter any nightmare type thing. So if anyone tries to pull them into a dream, whether that be a sequence 7 nightmare or any spectator, sequence 5 and above pathway, they're able to resist it pretty well. So all in all, a very decent sequence 5 if you do your research. And let's move on to sequence 4. Now let's move on to sequence 4 Shaman King, or also known as an Earl among the Sanguines. Let's go over their abilities because there's a bunch of them. First of all, they're able to turn into a bunch of illusory / real, bats, and there are millions of these bats. And unless you kill every single one of these bats, the Shaman King will be perfectly fine, will be able to reconstruct themselves later on. So this is incredibly useful for escaping situations. Then they gain some, not authority, but access to substitution spells. They gain 2 new abilities. The first one is Gaze of Darkness. They're able to form a substitution spell between their eye and the opponent. That means once the substitution connection is linked between my eye and your physical body, once you look me in the eyes, I can rip out my eye, and whatever I do to my eye will basically happen to you. So if I destroy my eyeball, rip it out, destroy it, of course this will hurt pretty damn badly. You'll pretty much be gravely injured if you have no other way to escape this. Again, if you're a physical fighter, you're pretty much cooked in this scenario. On top of this, they also gain another substitution spell, which is very similar to the paper figurine substitution, but instead of paper, it's moon. So basically, they're able to teleport around, create these figures in the air, and once they get injured, they're able to substitute themselves, and they'll be perfectly fine. Very similar to a magician or the full pathway and all the other abilities that come later on. And lastly, they gain access to ritualistic magic, but they no longer need to do ritualistic magic, as in they're able to completely skip the ritual part of ritualistic magic and give themselves incredible buffs simply on the spot because they are able to interact so closely with nature. Some examples of what they can do is draw strength from the moon itself, making them extremely powerful in every way, shape, or form. On top of them being in their domain, this will make them an absolute beast to deal with. On top of this, they can also increase their spirituality so much within a region that they can control any undead creatures within it. That sounds pretty broken to me. As for the physical enhancements, even though they do become incredibly strong physically, they still prefer to basically sit out, be on the sidelines, and opt for more of a spell magician type role instead of being up in the battle physically. This is because they still have their weak point. If their heart, someone were to pierce their heart, they would die on the spot. On top of that, they develop another weak point, which is in their head, basically a crimson moon in their head. If someone were to pierce their head or their heart, they would die instantly. So they lay back, they help their teammates, they create an optimal domain, and they basically chill out. On top of this, they also live up to 1,000 years at this sequence. That is incredibly long for a sequence 4. I mean, they've always lived long. Even at sequence 7, 300 years is ridiculous. So if you want to live long, definitely choose this pathway. Anyways, that's it for this sequence, and let's move on to sequence 3. Now let's move on to sequence 3 High Summoner, also known as a Marquise among the Sanguine ranks. In my opinion, this sequence 3 really isn't that great because of the amount of risks involved in it, and in my opinion, the benefits aren't really worth it. Basically, as the name suggests, they're able to summon creatures and sometimes even summon cosmic entities that don't even follow any of the 22 pathways. Now this, I'm just me saying it, you should understand that the risk this bears is incredible. If they need help, of course they can summon something last minute if they're losing a fight, but what comes out of what they summon is completely random. On top of this, they're also able to create a door, so not only are they able to create a rift that, things will get summoned by instantly, they're also able to create a door that spiritual world creatures will come from that are usually around the same strength as them, but sometimes, again, this is very random and why I don't like it very much, because you don't want random things in Lord of the Mysteries. So sometimes they might be far weaker, sometimes they might be far stronger and even kill you. You still have to negotiate the time with them. So doing all this in the middle of a battle isn't great. But of course, sometimes this can come in handy. They can even summon angels sometimes. So if they make a deal with an angel and then later on they're in the battle, they can simply summon the angel and the angel will arrive without any warning and of course help them in their battle. But all in all, just the risks involved, sometimes summoning cosmic entities that they know nothing about. It's a very dangerous game in my opinion and not worth it. Also, they can summon huge wings that encompass an area in a sort of field of darkness, not concealment, just darkness, and it will basically seem like that area is separated from the real world. Again, nothing too crazy. All in all, a very decent sequence 3. In my opinion, actually no, I take it back, not a great sequence 3. Let's move on to sequence 2. Now let's move on to sequence 2 Life Giver, also known as the Duke among these Sanguines. This is a very strong sequence 2 in my opinion. The first authority they get is the authority over spirituality. They're able to manipulate it in every form, such as for example simply walking and replenishing all the spirituality of everyone around you, or making someone's one specific target spirituality unstable and make them unable to use it to the normal degree that they would be usually. You know, it's basically like a natural function to angels at this point, so suddenly being able to not use it naturally is a very weird feeling that can throw them off and eventually cause them to lose the fight. On top of this, as a life giver and having the power of creation as well, authority over creation, they're able to live for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, around 5,000 to 10,000 years, which again, for an angel, this is incredibly high. I don't need to say it again. Sequence 7, they was incredibly high. Sequence 4, and now sequence 2, they're able to live for so long. On top of this, because their authority over creation, they're able to do multiple things. If someone isn't dead but has anything else, basically killing them, corruption, filth, an illness, whatever it is, if they are not dead, the life giver can fully revive them within a matter of seconds. Their own regenerative capabilities are insane. Throw a bunch of lightning, throw a bunch of cannonballs, throw anything you want at me. If it takes longer than a millisecond to kill me, I'm able to instantly regenerate my entire body. It is incredibly strong. Just their ability to regenerate themselves, bring life wherever they go, and sometimes even seep away life from other people, extend their own lifespan, and etc. Mess with people's spirituality. It's a very strong sequence too, in my opinion. And as for their strength abilities, they are able to transform into moonlight even when there's no moonlight around. They can open multiple doors of summoning. Their bat wings that they can summon are now kilometers long, massive bat wings. They're able to cause an evil, bloody, and cold full moon appear anywhere and everywhere they want. They're also able to basically create their paper figurines and make them act like the sequence 2 life giver themselves, basically being able to do whatever they want while their figurine acts like themselves. And lastly, they also get their mythical creature form, which is just a human with the moon on their back, bat wings, and red eyes. And of course, it is incredibly beautiful. It is the most beautiful thing you'll ever gaze at. It basically encompasses the concept of beauty itself. So yeah, very cool mythical creature form in my opinion. And let's move on to sequence 1. Now let's move on to sequence 1, Beauty Goddess, also known as Queen among the Sanguine ranks. Now basically, if you are a male and you drink this potion, you will be forcibly turned into a female, but it isn't necessarily a bad change because the abilities are worth it. First of all, you become beauty itself. You become the concept of beauty and have the authority over it. Now beauty is a very dangerous concept because people won't want to harm you. Even great old ones, beings that have no human feelings, human emotions, will not want to harm you because of your beauty. It's not like a demoness's charm, you know, their sort of seductiveness. No, it is literal beauty. It is more beautiful than a demoness, but not as charming, if you know what I mean. Regardless, nothing wants to harm them. Even when you try and harm them, you just won't. You will try and resist it as much as you can. On top of this, because of their beauty and because of their ability to control life, plants, etc., no creature under this level of sequence 1 will be able to resist their summoning. They can summon multiple doors of life, and any creature that isn't a sequence 1 at least will not be able to refuse them and will automatically be tamed by the beauty goddess. And they also hold some level of authority over the moon. They can basically draw upon the power of the moon to create environments that are favorable for themselves, and they can even change the color of the moon itself. And lastly, they are able to live for so long there are no limitations anymore. Very similar to sequence 0s, and above that, yeah, they have no limitation at the angel level. So again, if you want to live forever, if you want to live for a very long time, choose this pathway, please. Anyways, that's really all we know about it. A very cool concept of a sequence 1 in my opinion. I really like the concept of beauty, and let's move on to sequence 0. Now let's talk about sequence 0 Moon, also known as true ancestor among these sanguine ranks. She holds the authority over so many different things: spirituality, beauty, plants, beyond her animals, etc. Some level of bizarreness, some level of darkness, some level of life. So extremely strong, but let's go over their abilities. First of all, she holds authority not of the moon itself. The moon itself isn't an authority, but rather she can manipulate the moon and turn into a symbol for many different authorities. Let me explain to you what I mean by this. For example, she can create a blood moon that will unleash countless monsters into the real world. She can create a crimson moon that will basically create a bunch of spirituality, everyone to get boosted spirituality. She can create a full moon which will calm people down like Placid. She create a silver moon which will cut off spirituality, and she create a waning moon which will cause the darkness and bizarreness authorities to basically become stronger. And of course, she holds the authority over taming anything. Any Beyonder creature that is in sequence 0 will automatically be tamed by the moon themselves. And she is the most beautiful thing you will ever see in your life, unless you've seen the Brood Hive. So she is the second most beautiful thing in the entire multiverse and the entire universe. She also has the authority over summoning. She's able to summon the most terrifying of things, such as the Brood Hive or the Mother Goddess of Depravity. She holds the authority over spirituality, which basically can make a group's entire spirituality unable to recover and unable to use. She holds the authority over life. She's able to create living beings themselves, cleanse corruption, anything related to life, heal any wounds pretty much, and able to grant and take back life itself. Of course, no need for lifespan at this point. And of course, some level of darkness and bizarreness, which is basically just gaining access to more spells and just being a really weird opponent to face. So all in all, a very strong sequence 0 as well. In my opinion, looking back at this pathway now that I know more about it, it is definitely up there in not only my favorites, but also strength-wise favorites. This pathway is so damn cool. We all want to be a vampire. I mean, just look at how sexy Emlyn White is. We all want to look like him. So I'll put it in my top 5 favorites for sure. And in terms of strength, I'll put this top of B tier. Actually, I'll put it A- tier, top of B tier, simply because of the fact I don't think it has enough kick to it to really propel it up into that S tier, but it still has some crazy abilities. And if what you're looking for is to live for a long time and live a very peaceful life, this pathway is for you. But in terms of pure combat strength, as we talked about before, this pathway is definitely more of the support type, basically throwing spells out from the side, creating domains that are favorable for them. But in terms of just a bit of everything, it is very strong. So enough yap. A- tier is where it goes for now, actually B+. And yeah, that's it for this pathway. Let me know where you think it ranks and what pathways you want to see next. Love you guys. See you all in the next one.